My name is Tony McCarty. I was in business for about 35 years. Started back at Sea Dive here in Morgan City back in '79 and ended my career at Oceaneering in 2011. One of the best projects I was ever on was with Jim Cober, Wild Well Control. We had gotten on the Norman Clipper coming from Norway right after Katrina. We had a project for Apache. Had 126 platforms to take out, plus we added projects in between that. It was on the vessel for about right at 4.5 years, and 3.5 with Apache. I was a saturation superintendent on the vessel. And during that time, it was so busy, not enough divers in the industry at that time, so many people had gotten out. We had contracted a company from South Africa. We probably run about 36 divers through there in a 3-year period or so. Had some really good hands come through. It's all saturation. We put the M7 SAT system on the Norman Clipper back in the day, and it was one of the portable systems that Oceaneering had at the time. One of the events we had, one of the South African divers was down on bottom. We'd go down and we'd make sure we'd get all the high areas first, and the first thing would be to go in and try to P&A these wells, pump into them, and try to get it temporary wellhead on them. He had pulled it all the way back. I'm telling him about the wild well, about our project. And we had one of our South African divers down on the bottom. We had 2 production tubings that was inside the caisson, and he had already cut the production tubings off. He sheared the edges, and he was rubbing his hands over to make sure he didn't have any sharp edges before we put the temporary wellhead on. Well, he had his Kevlar gloves on, and as he was rubbing, we took a negative pressure, and it sucked his hand down on the production tubing. And we were in about 200 foot of water. The standby diver had a band mask in the bell, and I was up in my office whenever I saw it. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, saw it on my monitor, run down to dive control. Mike was on the bottom. Johannes was his name. He was trying to use his shackle breaker to ply his hand up, couldn't get it up. We jumped the diver, Rob Marsh. He went down, and luckily we had enough of the tubing sticking up that Rob was able to get a grinder up under his hand, and to break the suction, he was able to cut a hole in it and to get his hand off of it. The whole event was only about 16 minutes, but it seemed like a lifetime at the time. But Mike came out. No, I was more concerned about him being cut, maybe sucking blood or something out. But he ended up not having any issues, no broken bones or anything. He was double jointed from what he said, so that might have helped us at the time. But that was one of the best projects that I'd ever been on my 35 years. It was really some good men on it. Jim Cober, Wild Well Control, they were top-notch old divers that, whenever you got an old diver on the job that's helping you out and running it and pushing you, you always come out better. It don't matter what the job is. It's always
words of wisdom or advice for young people coming into the industry?
For young people coming into the industry, boy, nowadays I can imagine it's tough, but don't think that you go in and know it all, because you don't know anything until you get out here. School is just the beginning of it. It's a life experience for divers. You learn it on the job, and you learn it from the men you're working with. And that's I loved it. I miss it, but.
You want to tell me your name again?
Yep.
Give me your final.
Yep. Tony McCarty. Oceaneering was my last 8 or 10 years. I got one more good story I'd like to tell you about. Back whenever we put the American Constitution together at American Oilfield Divers, I got back into the diving industry in '96 after a broken leg from a horse accident, and we was building the system. We got it on the American Constitution. It had been on the Constitution probably close to 2 years. We were launching the bell, and we had just picked up on the latches. We took the load on the bell, and the drum for the bell cable was beside the dive control. I was running the bell panel, and we picked up the latches, and it was a drum. It's about 6 foot high, 1.5 foot wide, 1.25 inch cable on it, with all 12 bolts sheared that was holding the bell drum cable on. And the bell dropped from deck of the boat down to the bottom of the vessel, probably about 20 foot in the water. and the divers losing pressure, you know, screaming we're coming to the surface. And I saw on the pneumo that I had them pressed about 250, and they were, you know, coming up to 200. So I was slowly adding gas, keeping them at pressure. Come to find out they didn't close the Whitey valve enough for one of their internal pneumos, and finally got it closed. I'd overpressured them at about 325, which that was okay. At least they wasn't coming up. But that was, it took them about 4 hours to get them back on deck, lacked onto the system. But that was one of them moments that you would never expect in a million years, but it worked out in the end.
Tony, where are you from?
I'm from Mississippi, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I came down and lived in Morgan City about 3 years. I lived in Louisiana altogether up till '96, and then moved back over there and then started working for Oceaneering in 2000, around that time.